Hello, it's so nice to be with you guys today. My name is Laura Jenkins, and I'm excited to get to talk with you today. I work as a counselor at the Mount Juliet Church of Christ, and I love what I get to do. I get to counsel mostly adolescents and young adults, and it is just something that I'm super passionate about. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there with you guys in person. The week of y'all's conference is also the week of our church camp. And so my husband is the youth minister here, and we definitely do church camp together and take our whole family. And so it was just a really crazy busy week to try to fit this into. So I'm so thankful that Miss Vicky thought of, hey, let's just record it and do it that way. And so hopefully my sharing the screen will work with you guys. So bear with me for just 1 second. We're going to open up my PowerPoint so that you guys can kind of see a little bit of what I'm talking about today. So I get to talk about understanding the teenage brain. And what an amazing big topic that is. But as I was thinking about this topic, I was thinking about what would be the first thing I would ask you guys if I was standing in the room with you and could hear your responses. And I think it would be this question. If you have a teenager, are you starting to feel like your teenager has lost his or her mind? Or maybe it's that you feel like you're going to lose your mind while raising them. I have a feeling that most of you are nodding your heads right now. If so, you are not alone. Most parents feel this way at some point. I hope to help you understand that your teen has not lost their mind. I hope to help give you some perspective and help you understand what's going on in the mind of the developing teen brain. And I hope that this knowledge will help you with things that sometimes frustrate or offend or even perplex you about your teenager. Neuroscience is helping us to understand more and more about the development of the brain, and this knowledge has been so helpful in understanding how the brain works, and specifically how your teenage brain works. So I'm sure it can be pretty overwhelming to see your sweet son or daughter suddenly morph into this bundle of hormones and angst, right? Right now I have an 8 and 9-year-old, but I know that my time is coming with this. And so what I hope I can help you see is that your teenager is an amazing young adult whose brain is under massive construction. When we start to see what all the teenage brain is going through, we can improve our relationships with our teenager through compassion and understanding. And so we can learn how to better help our teenagers as they are undergoing these major brain changes. I often hear teens say that they feel misunderstood mostly because they feel like their parents expect them to stay the same as they were when they were children. But the thing is, adolescence is all about change. And so if we can grasp that a remarkable and massive remodeling is going on in your teen's brain, we can develop greater compassion. And the process of parenting teens, can be one that involves more understanding. It's one that's constant and often exhausting, but it's worth it. We just have to stick with them. So let's just start with some facts on the brain. The brain reaches its biggest size in early adolescence. For girls, the brain reaches its biggest size around 11, and for boys, it reaches its biggest size around age 14. You probably know that girls mature faster than boys, but this difference doesn't mean that boys or girls are smarter than one another. It's just how God made us. The brain continues to mature even after it's done growing. So though the brain may be done growing in size, It does not finish developing and maturing until mid to late 20s. The front part of our brain, which is called the prefrontal cortex, is one of the last brain regions to mature. This area is responsible for skills like planning, prioritizing, controlling impulses. Because these skills are still developing, teens are more likely to engage in risky behaviors without considering the potential results of their decisions. Sound familiar? The rational part of the teen's brain just isn't fully developed, and it won't be until like age 25 or so. In fact, recent research has found that adults and teen brains, they just work differently. Adults think with the prefrontal cortex, so the brain's rational part, and this is the part of the brain that responds to situations with good judgment and an awareness of long-term consequences. So that's what an adult thinks out of. But a teen processes information through the amygdala. This is the emotional part of our brain. So in teens' brains, the connections between the emotional part of the brain and the decision-making center are all still developing. And most of the time, it's not always at the same rate. That's why teens have overwhelming emotional input that they can't explain later what they were thinking. The thing is, they weren't thinking as much as they were feeling. So it helps us, again, grasp why sometimes they make the decisions and act the way that they do. The teen brain is also ready to learn and adapt. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. But the teen brain has lots of plasticity, which basically means it can change, it can adapt, it can respond to its environment. That's why challenging academics, mental activities, exercise, creative activities, such as art, can help the brain mature and learn. To better understand this concept, I like to talk about the visual of a swing set, okay? If you visit any playground with a swing set, you'd find one thing in common: a worn out path. Specifically, I'm talking about that thin patch that's underneath the swing itself. There may be grass growing all around the swing, but as long as the swing is being used, you are sure to find a worn out path. The reason is obvious, of course. The path has been tread over and over again, back and forth, up and down. Ring the bell, class repeat, right? In the same way, our thoughts pave the paths in our brain. So brain research shows that every conscious thought we have is recorded in our cerebral cortex. I know I'm using a lot of big science words, but it just helps us to all make sense. Scientists have actually noted from varying neurological studies that we can either make our brains have positive or negative pathways based on what kinds of thoughts that we think. Remember, our thoughts pave the paths in our brain. So repetitive thoughts deepen the paths in our brain. This creates this memory embedded thought pattern. And when we have emotion tied to that thought pattern, it creates stronger memory paths. This is why we forget random thoughts that aren't tied to emotion, but remember thoughts that are. For example, your teen may make a bad grade on a math test at an early age. And maybe they begin to think, I'm not good at math, I never will be. These self-defeating thoughts create feelings of inadequacy. So they have a tendency of playing on repeat in our minds whenever the next math assignment is given. So translation, the things we think, whether positive or negative, really do matter because they directly contribute to the health of our brains. But there's good news, okay? The good news of all of this is that God created the brain with a remarkable ability to change itself. Just think about this. You can change your brain by changing your thoughts. Remember that big word is plasticity. So, not that we need science to prove something that God has already written in his word, but notice what he spoke through Paul many years ago in Romans 12:2. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. The renewal and transformation of our minds is possible, and it's a gift. It's a gift from God. So our teenagers' brains have so much plasticity, and they can change their brains for the better very, very quickly. So again, that's why it's a good time to challenge them with the academics, with sports, exercise, art, and just creative activities, because it helps the brain mature and learn. It's why it's also really important to teach them how to plant God's truth in their mind. We can help their brains grow in healthy and transforming ways by helping them learn to think on what Philippians 4:8 says. Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. So we can help them learn how to create healthy pathways. This is what I do. This is what excites me, and it feels strange to mention a book that I just wrote on this topic, but I also want it to be a super helpful resource for you and your teens on learning how to create these healthy pathways in the brain, because our time is way too short to dive into all the material that I've written on this. But I hope that if you have interest in learning more about this, that you'll look at my newest book, Thought Garden, where really the whole point of the book is to help you or your teen develop healthy thought patterns. It's something that we're all in the process of. It's something that we're all capable of developing, again, because of this neuroplasticity of the brain. And so I hope that you will take time to look at that and to dig into that on how we can best go about doing that. And it's always through God's word. And so anyways, wanted to kind of mention that, but again, it felt a little weird to mention something that I just wrote, but I just want it to be a helpful resource for you guys. So let's go on to the next facts about the brain. So many mental health disorders may begin to appear during adolescence. And this is due to the ongoing changes in the brain, along with the physical, the emotional, social changes. They make teens vulnerable to mental health problems. It's probably the reason that we see anxiety, depression, eating disorders, and other mental health things start to emerge, is because it is a time that a lot of changes are happening. But again, you're not set to those labels. We can learn how to create those healthy paths in the brain to help balance those things out. So I never like to even give labels to my clients of certain mental health issues, not because I don't think they're real, but because I like for them to see that they have the power with God to help change their thoughts and to change their brain. And so they're not stuck there. Okay, so the next fact is teens' brains may be more vulnerable to stress. And this directly links back to the last fact that I just gave you. Because the teen brain is still developing, teens may respond to stress differently than adults, which can lead to stress-related mental health disorders such as anxiety and depression. This is one big reason that we need to help our teens manage their stress, okay, and manage their schedules. I see teens busier than ever, and it's important for them to be able to take time to rest and to just be. It's amazing what slowing down a teenager's schedule can do for their overall mental health. So again, it's really, really important that we stay really diligent about managing their schedules and helping them to create healthy boundaries, so that they aren't too stressed out. Teens need more sleep than children and adults. So, research shows that melatonin levels in the blood are naturally higher later at night and drop later in the morning in teens than in most children and adults. This difference may explain why teens stay up late and struggle with getting up in the morning. So there's an actual scientific reason to this. Teens need about 8 to 10 hours of sleep each night. You know, I know that this can be one of the biggest issues in family is encouraging your teens to get more sleep, but, you know, just some helpful tips to help this happen is to ensure your teen has a comfortable, quiet sleep environment. Encourage winding down before bed, away from screens, including phones. I am amazed at how many of my clients stay on their phones late at night. Like I'm talking 4 a.m., watching YouTube videos on TikTok, on social media. They need balance and boundaries, and it's a parent's job to help create those. You know, it's important to encourage your teen to go to bed and wake up at regular times. Sleep is just so important. A lack of sleep can make it difficult to pay attention. It increases impulsivity, and it may increase the risk of irritability and depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues. And so, again, I can't emphasize sleep enough. The teen brain is also very resilient. Although adolescence is a vulnerable time for the brain and for teenagers in general, most teens go on to become healthy adults. So I hope that is encouraging to you, because they do. Most go on to be healthy adults. Most will balance out, and we can help them do that. Adolescents act differently from adults because, again, their brain is under major construction. Many parents don't understand why their teenagers occasionally behave in this impulsive, irrational, dangerous way. And at times it seems like teens don't think through or fully consider the consequences of their actions, right? Adolescents differ in adults in the way they behave, solve problems, and make decisions. And again, there are biological explanations for this difference. And so I just want to kind of re-emphasize that, because I think that's one of the biggest parts of understanding the teen brain. You know, that scientists have identified the specific region of the brain called the amygdala, and it's responsible for immediate reactions, including fear and aggressive behavior. This region develops early. However, that frontal cortex that we talked about, the area of the brain that controls reasoning and helps us think before we act, develops later. And this part of the brain is still changing and maturing well into adulthood. So basically, the adolescent brain works different because their actions are guided more by an emotional and reactive amygdala and less by a thoughtful, logical frontal cortex. And research has shown, and this is probably obvious, but research has also shown that exposure to drugs and alcohol during the teenage years can change or delay these developments in a huge way. So another important reason to stay away from those things. Based on the stage of the teen brain, adolescents are more likely to act impulsive, to misread or misinterpret social cues and emotions, get into accidents of all kinds, get involved in fights, and engage in dangerous or risky behavior. They're less likely to think before they act, pause to consider the consequences of their actions, or change their dangerous or inappropriate behaviors. Encouraging, right? um, Listen, these brain differences don't mean that young people can't make good decisions or tell the difference between right and wrong. It also doesn't mean that they shouldn't be held responsible for their actions. However, an awareness of these differences can help parents and teachers and counselors and advocates and policymakers understand, anticipate, and help the behavior of adolescents. Again, it's why it's so important to spend these teenage years planting truth into them so that we can see them, be able to see the difference between right and wrong, because they can. They're just going to think more through the emotional part of their brain versus the logical part. So that's all well and good. I guess it might be a little concerning to you, but how do we help our teenagers build a healthy brain? Because we can know all the facts, but we need to know how to help them while their brain is under this major construction. And so I want you to think about this. The combination of your teen's unique brain, because they're all developing at different paces, and the environment that your teen is in influences the way your teen acts, thinks, and feels. And so again, that's why it's really important to make sure that you're thinking about the range of activities and experiences your teens are into, and how these are shaping the brain of your teen and how they will take that into adulthood. You are an important part of your teen's environment, whether they admit to that or not. You mean a lot to your teen. How you guide and influence your teen will be important in helping your child, your teen, develop a healthy brain. So let's just talk about how your teenager spends their time. How your teenager spends their time is crucial to brain development. It's just so important that you include a wide variety of experiences and a good home environment while your teen's brain is under this major construction. So helpful ways that we can encourage good behavior and strengthen these positive brain connections in our teens. I've got several here, so bear with me, but I wanted to try to cover as many things as I could. And so, the first one is just let your teen take some healthy risk. New and different experiences help your teen develop an independent identity. That's part of growing up. So help them explore grown-up behavior and move towards independence. Help your teen find new creative expressive outlets for feelings. Your teens might be expressing and trying to control new emotions. So many teenagers find that doing or watching sports is helpful for this, or maybe it's music, writing, other art forms. They're all really good outlets. And so helping your teen to find what helps them. Talk through decisions with them, step by step. Ask about possible courses of action your teen might choose, and talk through the potential consequences. Encourage your teen to weigh up positive consequences or rewards against negative ones. Discuss the consequences of their actions can help teens to link the impulsive thinking with facts. So this helps the brain make those connections and wires the brain to make this link more often. Remind your teens that they're resilient and that they're competent. We want to build them up, okay? So they're so focused in the moment that adolescents have trouble seeing that they can play a part in changing bad situations. It can help to remind them of times in the past when they thought the ending would be devastating, but that it turned out best. Use family routines to give your teens some structure, okay? A lot of times I see parents that they stop those family routines as their teens become older. They were really great about it when the kids were younger, but then they stop because of busyness and because the teen maybe doesn't want to spend time with them. And there's always a time and place to give teens time to be alone, to process, to, again, be independent. But family routines are still important. And you might have to adjust them around school and family timetables, but it's still really important. Provide boundaries, opportunities for negotiating these boundaries. If you help them help you make the boundaries, they're going to be more apt to keep them. Young people need guidance and limit setting from parents and other adults. Be positive role model. Your behavior will show your teen the behavior you expect. So if you let them get a rise out of you, then you are teaching them it's okay for them to also get a rise when something happens that they don't like. Try to give gentle answers. A gentle answer turns away wrath. Stay connected with your teen. You probably want to keep an eye on your teen's activities, on their phone, on their friends. Be open and approachable to this. I know that the teenage years can create a lot of fear and frustration in many parents, and it may feel simpler and safer to stay out of the way, but you must remain present with them and remain aware. You cannot have the influence your teen needs if you disconnect from them. If you want to be part of shaping your teenager's brain, you've got to be consistently and courageously present. Let's see. Ask teens if they want you to respond when they come to you with problems. Parents tend to jump in with advice to try to fix their children's problems or to place blame. But this can make the teens less likely to open up to you in the future. You want to make it emotionally safe and easy for them to come to you so that they can be comfortable with telling you these things. I kind of always suggest this: ask, listen, and then respect. It's really helpful if it's in those orders. Ask, listen, and respect. There are going to be times you simply don't understand. I would encourage you to do everything you can from inserting your own ideas and opinions or suggestions. Trust there will be a time for that later. When they are in an emotional state, it's just not the time. Show respect for what your teen says by reiterating it, confirming what you heard. Keep conversations short and to the point. This is especially effective for communicating with teens. Don't make every conversation you have into a lecture. Frequent, shorter conversations make a bigger impact on teens. Remember what your teen says, and then ask about it in a few days. Revisit those things, the things you also wanted to say. But again, don't make it too long. They're going to turn off what you're saying. Pray about it and let them know that you're praying about it, that you haven't forgotten, that you care. Another really important thing is don't minimize, empathize. If your daughter is crying because she has a huge zit on her forehead, please rethink dismissive statements like, get over it, everyone has zits, or that's not really a big deal. These types of things really matter to your teens. It's far more helpful to say things like, I could see why that would be hard for you, or that must be frustrating. Help them see that you are working to understand. Keep in mind that your teens don't often understand themselves, so they can't imagine anyone else understanding them. You best demonstrate understanding by empathy and not by solving the problems. So I'll go back to my PowerPoint here. Teenagers are often passionate about their interests, especially ones that give them opportunities to socialize. You can help your child or teen develop skills and confidence by supporting their interests, activities, and hobbies, and that's so important. Again, that's another way to be connected. And then encourage empathy. Talk about feelings, yours, your teens, other people's. Highlight the fact that other people have different perspectives and circumstances. Try not to do it in a lecture, but encourage empathy. Reinforce that many people can be affected by one action. So in doing these things, and with the brain development, this means that your child, your teen, will start to think more logically, think about things more abstractly, and understand that issues aren't always simple. Pick up more on other people's emotional cues, solve complex problems in a more logical way, and see problems from different perspectives. And they'll get a better perspective on the future. So these are the goals. Now, there can be extreme behaviors and extreme emotions, right? And we need to know how and when to get help. Extreme behavior and emotions are matters that typically call for medical professional attention and counseling. But it is also true that all adolescents exhibit at least occasional outbursts or episodes of misjudgment. Teenagers are human, okay? And so are their brains. So every child, teen faces difficulties from time to time, right? Just like as adults, that's part of life. Feelings of sadness, loss, emotional extremes are part of growing up. Conflicts between parents and children, parents and teens are all inevitable. Those things will happen. These are normal changes in behavior due to growth and development. But these problems may often arise in times of change. Maybe it's the death of a grandparent, a family member, maybe it's a new child, or maybe even a move. All times of change will create an unbalance in your teen's behavior and emotions, and also in your child too. So it's important to just have that awareness and understand that. Generally, these kinds of things tend to fade on their own, or sometimes they fade with limited visits to a counselor or other mental health professionals as teens or children adjust to the changes in their life. However, there are some times when children or teens develop inappropriate or unhealthy emotional and behavioral responses to situations in their lives that persist over time, okay? So what's that magical moment when parents should recognize their child's behavior has surpassed the boundary of what other children do and has become sufficiently alarming to warrant professional help? Well, there probably isn't this magical moment that you will know we got to get help. It's often a gradual awareness that a child or a teen's emotional or behavioral development just isn't where it should be. And that sends most parents on a quest for answers and help. I think really the most important question for all parents of school-age children to consider is, how much distress is your teen's behavior or your child's behavior or their emotions causing? As many of you know, a teen's emotions and behaviors doesn't just affect them, it will affect the entire household. It will affect their school. It will affect everywhere that they go. And so if a teen's aggressive or argumentative behaviors are affecting them in a way that life is unmanageable, we need to get help. Or maybe they're sad and withdrawn, and you're starting to see that as a problem where they are unable to carry out normal routines. That should be seen as a problem. Again, maybe the most simplest way to put it is your teen's behavior making life for them or others unmanageable? How much distress is it causing? Of course, there are extreme behaviors and emotions that we have to take very seriously. Attempts at self-injury, threats of suicide, violent behaviors, severe withdrawal that creates an inability to carry on normal routines must be regarded as emergencies for which parents should seek immediate attention. You can do that through a mental health place, through medical clinic, through a mental health hotline that will direct you to someone that can help you, or a crisis center. But it's very important to receive that help really, really quickly. You know, if your teen is going through some of the things that I just listed, whether it's a change at home, it's a change in their environment and they're struggling with that, or if it's some of the more severe things, it is really good to go ahead and get them in to Christian counseling. You know, Christian counseling can help the teen create these healthy brain pathways that we've been talking about so that they can manage and control their emotions versus having their emotions control them. That is often what I teach in counseling, because these emotions are going to be big and maybe even feel really overwhelming as the teen's brain again is under construction. And so I see my job is to help them know, okay, how can I better cope with these feelings that I'm going to have? And I try to empower them to know they can feel difficult feelings and still be okay. And they can be okay because of who God is and what God says. And so we work on planting those truths, and we work on getting support in the ways that are helpful, and we work on healthy distractions, all kinds of things to help the teen brain again create these healthy pathways so that when they do become an adult, when this brain does continue, or when their brain does fully develop, they've developed into adults that are able to manage their emotions and think logically. So we want to tie them both in together. And again, remember that brain doesn't fully develop until age 25. And so it is a process. It can be a long one, but they are worth it. And God designed this process for a reason. And so we just must trust in Him as we stick with our adolescent through this process, and we will see them become amazing, amazing adults because they're already amazing teens. They just need a lot more support. And so it has been such a pleasure to speak to you today. Again, I hate that I can't be there. Some of you may be over kind of the virtual stuff in our COVID world, but I'm thankful that we can at least meet this way. I did want to mention another book that is really helpful for understanding the teen brain, and it's called Your Teenager Is Not Crazy. It is by Jeremy Clark, and it is a really helpful book that goes into great detail of everything I just talked to you about today. If I could recommend one thing, it's that you don't let your teen see this book, because they're going to see this book and think that you do think they're crazy. And they might internalize that to think that they are crazy, because sometimes they do feel crazy. And so I never find it helpful for them to see this book, but it's helpful for you to read this book. So do what you got to do to read it, maybe without them seeing it. I've had some people even tear off the front cover. So, but it's so helpful, and I hope that this information has been helpful for you today. I would like to just end in prayer for you guys and for your teens. So pray with me. Father in heaven, I thank you so much for everyone that has been so attentive today to listen to what I had to say. God, I thank you for the ways that you've created our brains to change through you and through your word and through your grace and mercy. And God, I pray that you will help these parents to have wisdom and insight on how to help their teens through this major time of construction of their brains. God, I pray that you will help them to all plant your truth into the minds of their teens and into their own minds. God, I pray that you will give them balance and stability, and that you will help them to put their trust in you as they trust their teenager to you, God. And we just thank you for the remarkable gifts that you've given us. We thank you for the ways that this life has meaning, all because of the cross. And we thank you for the way that Jesus has made all things possible and made life worth living. We love you. I pray safety over these moms as they leave from this retreat and go back home to their families. And I just thank you for their influence in your kingdom. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks again. Bye.